We featured a channel called Tell It Animated earlier on, and they did a video called The Evolution of Godzilla. In this video, they did a really good job illustrating the different Godzillas and how he's changed throughout his films over the years. We've also noticed that little changes have been made to Godzilla from the 2014 film to the 2019, when he got beefed up, his dorsal plates changed, he was a little bulkier, his head looks a little bit different, and even though there were minor changes over a span of 3 to 5 years, he still looks a bit different than he did in the 2014 movie. We also feature a channel called Filmcore, who does a really good job at illustrating it side by side, even with the atomic breath. So considering how Godzilla constantly is changing his appearance, what would he look like millions of years from now? There's two parts of this question, or should I say there's two questions for this topic, because we know that Godzilla changes in the films, and we know that's for design choices, but we also know within his universe in the movies, he also changes phenotypically. So we'll try to answer both, from the movie sense, or the in-universe, and from the external. Let's talk about the movies first. We know that Godzilla's appearance has changed over the movies, and it's more apparent when you look at the 1954 movie all the way to the 2019 movie. There are certain things that remain on him that are iconic, such as his upright position, his dorsal plates, and his ability to breathe atomic breath. Godzilla started out, because they didn't have CGI back then, as basically dudes in costumes. And now, in the 2019 and 2014 renditions of the Monsterverse Legendaries pictures, Godzilla and his friends are CGI monstrosities. In the past 65 years or over, he has gone through many cosmetic alterations as well as personality changes. At times he'd look menacing, and at times he would look cute and cuddly, and then at times he would just look frickin'... yeah. The reason for this is because when a franchise has been running this long, you always want to see a new and improved version of something with which you're familiar. If you think about it, celebrities do the same thing. They're the same person, but they're always changing up their look so they can stay new, exciting, and relevant. The trick is to do little changes, because if you do too drastic of changes, then it's not going to any longer look like the character with which you're familiar. And then it ends up putting people... I'm sorry. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Moving on. I'm going to hell. This is what really happened with Zilla, or the Godzilla movie. More specifically, the Godzilla 1998 movie, where they drastically changed Godzilla. They called it Godzilla, but it looked... well, I won't say it looked nothing like him, because the creature did look like Godzilla. It's a large theropod-like creature with dorsal things on its back, but to everyone else, the change was so drastic that they rejected it. And as a matter of fact, the creature went on to being its own character. Then with the relaunch or reboot of the franchise, they let Godzilla go back to his roots to look how he did before. Now, notice he didn't look like any of the previous iterations of him, but he looked similar enough that people recognized this as being Godzilla, but just looking a little bit more modernized or stylized. In this case, Godzilla is essentially changing his outfits, not changing who he is. Oh my god. Now that's from the movie standpoint of things. That's the external, outside the universe point of things. That's a stylized decision that the studios have made, and it works because they did gradual changes, which is kind of what they did also with Jurassic Park. You notice from the very first Jurassic Park films, the raptors look drastically different than they do in the modern films. Well, not drastically different that we don't recognize them as being velociraptors anymore, or being of the same species, they just have made gradual changes. In the first movie, the raptors were monotonous in their appearance, they were more brown so that they blended in with their environment a little better. In the Lost World Jurassic Park, the raptors look red with tiger stripes to make them look more menacing, but we still recognize them as being velociraptors. In Jurassic World 3 is where they had the most drastic and interesting change. We still recognize them as velociraptors, but they obviously looked a lot more bird-like than their predecessors. There's also sexual dimorphism, which made them a lot more realistic in that film. And then we had the final film, which we went back to the roots for the older stylized raptors and just made them pop a little more by giving them more colors and giving certain typical characteristics on each of their faces or their bodies. But we still know at their core that, wow, that's a Jurassic Park velociraptor, or a realistic rendition of the Deinonychus. You can look at this and everyone on the face of the earth will recognize this as being a velociraptor. If someone showed you a picture of this, or this, or this, you would not readily recognize it as being a velociraptor. What is this? A dinosaur shitcake. What the matter is, we will all recognize this shape and this structure over this if someone tells us this is a velociraptor, or even... No. Talk about in the universe. In universe, we see that Godzilla either adapts his physiology to suit his environment, or enemies against whom he would fight, or if there was an external source that affected the way he looked. In other creatures in the monsterverse change in their appearance sometimes drastically throughout their life cycle, or due to the aggressive changes in the environment. Now, with that being said, what would Godzilla look like millions of years from now? Chances are Godzilla is still going to look very similar to how he looks in the movie aspect of things with the design, but if we start to find things that are more lanky and weird looking, if we start to find those more terrifying, they may gradually change Godzilla to look less fluffy and to look more long and slender. As for in-universe, well, the Godzilla from the monsterverse as we know him started out as a regular creature, or as he always was. But then if he started out as he always was, that means he evolved from an animal. Several theories I have about this, about how the monsters, the kaiju from the monsterverse started, but let's just say that Godzilla evolved alongside other animals. He didn't always look like that. I mean, chickens didn't always look like chickens, and theropod dinosaurs from the Cretaceous period didn't always look like that either. Many animals started out as fish, or weird small four-legged animals. So to get an idea of what he would look like millions of years from now in universe, let's take a look at what he might have started out as. You might have heard of the Godzillasaurus. The Godzillasaurus was a species of theropod dinosaur that appeared in the 1991 Godzilla film Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. It's based on old-style dinosaurs where they drag their huge, heavy tail behind them on the ground and stand a little bit more upright like that of a human. The Godzillasaurus was also very tall, standing at 12 meters in height. Its head was smaller compared to average theropods, and it had a double row of teeth like a shark. It was also said to have possessed a second or sacral brain located in its hip so that it can control its lower body functions, similar to how the Stegosaurus was mistaken to have a second brain. Really? Now there are other things listed here, like its ability to communicate telepathically, possibility of them having been brood parasites, which meant that they laid their eggs in the nests of other animals, kind of like the cockatoo, I think it is. I think it's the common cuckoo or cockatoo? God damn it, I forgot. But the brown-headed cowbird is one of them that does this. Anyways, let's assume this is what Godzilla actually was. Now, in that older movie, the reason why the Godzillasaurus transformed into Godzilla as we know him now in the monsterverse, or as he was in that movie, is because a nuclear submarine crashed in the Bering Sea and provided the energy for him to turn into Godzilla. Monsterverse Godzilla is so much more gigantic, and he will just continue becoming gigantic. He has a small head compared to the rest of his body. He has the ability to shoot out a freaking atomic beam from out of his mouth. Muscles are much bigger, his hips are much wider, and no doubt, his scales and hide are a lot more durable than they were in his previous form. Since the monsterverse Godzilla, as I said before, does not ascribe to the story that he was mutated via a bomb or pollution or whatever else there is, then we can estimate that he got this way through evolution. But we've seen also that as Godzilla has grown and adapted, he's done it because of his environment or because of whatever foe or creature he fights. He developed gills, because I don't remember the Godzillasaurus having any gills, it was a theropod that was above ground, but he developed gills so that he could also return to the sea and basically optimize himself to survive in any environment possible. So, looking at how the Godzillasaurus looked before, clunky theropod dinosaur that just looked quite ugly, to be honest. A titanic beast, how would he look millions of years from now? Now, a lot of this would be dependent on the kind of enemies he would fight. For the most part, Godzilla's outer extremities have stayed in proportion with his body, with his legs being a lot bigger. We can imagine that as he gets larger, his legs will get a lot more clunky. And I asked this question before, but as creatures get surprisingly big, it's hard and actually less efficient for them to just walk on 2 legs to support all of that weight. I can imagine that as Godzilla gets so heavy, he would stop walking upright and instead his weight would be forced to be distributed evenly, which would cause him to bend over this way, with his head being in front. This would also cause him to have to support his weight on his forearms or his forelimbs, which would have to make those bigger. So I'm not using my tablet, so forgive me. So of course he would bend over so that his weight can be supported evenly. He would be a lot larger. His forearms would also be a lot more beefy and be longer and larger as well to support his weight. He would still have the ability to walk on all 4s, but now he would move a lot more quick if he could distribute his weight evenly. Having to support all of that front weight and to evenly distribute it, then his forearms would have to be a lot more bulky, but his neck would also have to be a lot more bulky as well. His whole chest area would be a lot more meaty because he'd have to support all of that weight and evenly distribute it. His head would still be small, maybe it would be the same size or maybe it'd be a little bit smaller so that his weight would not be so heavy on the front. Because if his head gets bigger, then his weight's gonna be uneven. So I can imagine his head would stay the same pretty much. The rest of him is gonna get bigger, but he's also still going to be fighting other creatures. He would have the ability to push himself upright so that he can spew out his atomic breath if needed. He can be in an upright position and alternate between being in a quadrupedal position. Since Godzilla would be on all 4s, I can imagine that his dorsal fins or his dorsal plates, they're not really fins, but his dorsal plates would be a lot bigger for added defense. He would probably also have some on the other sides of his body as well, jutting out from the side similar to that of a Stegosaurus or an Ankylosaurus. Since they explored this in Shin Godzilla, I wouldn't even put it past them making Godzilla in such a way, or Godzilla evolving in such a way that he can also spew atomic breath from out of his tail somehow. Okay, that looks disgusting. Hold on. To make it blue. It's not liquid, it's atomic breath. Jesus, can't do anything, like, safely nowadays. You know what? Okay, you get the point. So, yeah. Because he's in a more vulnerable position, he would probably develop spikes on his tail as well for added defense. I know these are blue. But yeah, all his plates would come down to here, and then he would have spikes on his tail for added defense. Being at this disadvantage too, just like how the other quadrupedal titans like Behemoth and Methuselah have those horn defenses on their faces because they walk on all 4s, chances are Godzilla would also develop this as well. As his dorsals become more prevalent all over his body, they would probably push up towards his head and then become modified horns somehow. His chest cavity would be bigger for more efficiency of breathing while on land, while his gills would also be more modified as well, and he wouldn't just have little tiny slits on his neck, but larger gills near the back of his body as well. On all 4s, he would have to utilize biting a lot more, so this means that he would have more pronounced teeth that were basically designed for crushing or grabbing onto an opponent. We can say that he would look like Godzilla Earth, but Godzilla Earth has no contenders. Godzilla, in the monsterverse, is always fighting or keeping other titans in check, so he would have to keep evolving so that he could fight these animals. Now, if he was in a situation like Godzilla Earth where there were no other apex predators or no other titans to fight, really, and there was a long period of peace, then he wouldn't really feel the environmental pressures to change this drastically. Just after his fight with Muto Prime and with Ghidorah, we see that Godzilla was forced to take these changes. So many millions and millions and millions of years later, with the current situation with titans popping up everywhere, and they're constantly being threats in the environment and by way of other fauna or titanous creatures, Godzilla would probably evolve to look something like this. Maybe albeit a lot cooler, but he would be a lot more formidable and scary and agile than he is now. Being able to run on 4 legs would give him an edge up with other characters or creatures that are on 4 legs as well, and it would give him more stability. We notice how easy it is for Godzilla to get knocked over in his fight with Ghidorah and with the Mutos because he's so heavy, and even though he's bottom heavy, he's still on 2 legs. The Mutos and other creatures, you'll notice, do not walk on 2 legs like Godzilla does, and so it's a lot harder to knock them over. This is a disadvantage that Godzilla has fighting against other titans. So I could see that as he gets heavier and as he fights more of them, that he would too evolve to be on 4 legs so that he could have an edge up in battle. While of course still maintaining the ability to also switch to his bipedal stance if he has to fight something in the air. In that way, his tail would be so long, like that of Shin Godzilla's, so that he could not just propel himself in the water, but also balance himself adequately when he does have to take that bipedal stance. So as for in-universe, this is possibly what Godzilla would look like millions and millions of years later. Well, that was fun. What do you guys think? What do you think Godzilla's design would be in movies many years later? I mean, things change as the years go by. People will find certain things scary in the old days, and nowadays, if you look back at those old movies of things that they found scary, it's not that scary anymore. Now, stick creatures like Slender Man and Momo are scary. But as for the monsterverse, or within the movie's universe, Godzilla could change his looks, especially if you consider that he's evolved normally on Earth with other animals based on environmental pressures. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. This has been Alteori. You ask, we answer.